Like this. Welcome to a new episode of No Cap. And as usual, man, you're in for a good one. So what's up, man? Let's just start kicking it like we kick it, man. What you got on your mind?
You know what? I just looked behind me, and I just looked behind me, and when I did that, I got it. Ha. You like Charlemagne the God? You like Charlemagne? You ever listen to Charlemagne? You ever the Breakfast Club? Anyway,
I won't say that I like or dislike him. I'll
right.
say that.
I like.
But I have heard him make statements before that if I was able to rebuttal, I would have loved to rebuttal them. And I'll also say this before you get to your question about Charlemagne. When him and Lil Duval had their show way back in the day, Lil Duval was one of the first two people to have like a podcast show back in the day. And that's when I came to you. And the first time we did our very first podcast, I think it was like 2014. I don't even, it might have been before that. I don't even really remember when it was, but it was early on. But if you can go back and pull up their podcast, that's when we first started ours, is what I wanted to say. So I can get game from anybody and learn from anybody. So I do remember watching them do their thing, and we use that to get started. But anyway, yeah, there's some things he said before that I would have loved to rebuttal. And there's one thing on my mind in particular, but go ahead. What's on your mind?
All right. Reason I asked, I read his book, Shook Ones. And I also read another book, Can't Hurt Me, by David Goggins. And, oh shit. And as you can tell, I read a lot of books, brother.
As do I.
And I got another one, How to Conquer Your Fears, Phobias, and Anxiety.
As do I. I just moved into the office, but don't get me to pulling out. Hold on, man. Let's take it Just moving into this office. I don't even know where my books is at. But yeah, me too. My son does too. That's one thing that we do. We definitely read books. But yeah, go ahead.
A lot of books. Reading. If you notice what all them books had in common, How to Conquer Anxieties and fears and phobias and insecurities. David Goggins, he always was speaking on what was he said he used to be real fat. He said he used to be real fat. And he didn't want to be a fat. He used to be a fat bum, is what he said. Used to be a fat bum. And he said he got tired of being a fat bum. And so he started working out every day. He used to get picked on, bullied. And he said it was one street that he used to live on that he didn't want to go down no more, but he had to face his fear and go down it. Charlemagne really says he was dealing with anxiety, growing up, a lot of anxieties. And I can't remember all the book. I know the key part that I need to know. I remember one part that he was like, the bully. I gave one of my friends, I let him borrow my Nintendo cartridge game, and I went to go get the game back, and he didn't want to give me back the game, and a whole bunch of stuff. And the other one talks about the phobias and anxieties and things like that. So kind of want to harp on that with a little bit and talk about some of these phobias and anxieties that we have, because a lot of people deal with anxiety. I have dealt with anxiety and don't even know. Well, I don't want to say I dealt with anxiety. I have, but I don't know the scale that I can say, like, yeah, I dealt with it. Maybe it's different for everybody. I don't know. I've seen somebody with
I would assume any people have felt anxious before in their life, but there's different levels of anxiety. But yeah,
you feel
what you were saying.
So I seen one person. We get in the car, and as soon as we get on the freeway, like, we can drive all the rest of the way and be cool, but as soon as we get on the freeway, start tripping out. Like, yo, I gotta get out the car. We can't be on this freeway no more. And I'm looking like, yo, you tripping? We almost there. And they like, nah, get me off of here. And it kind of irritated me, like, man, shit, you finna make me go the long way when we can go the short way. And I didn't believe it to be. I thought it was like a hoax or something. Like, man, you bullshitting just because I guess you want to get your way or something. Then I spoke with another one of my folks, and I said, hey, man, such and such did this, and the first thing out of his mouth was, yo, my mom's be dealing with that, and that shit is real. And automatically, not automatically, but I said, okay, let me look at it from that person's perspective, I guess. I don't know, because for me, I don't think we identify our anxieties. For me, I don't think I identified my anxieties or labeled them anxiety in the past to properly diagnose what it is for myself. You know what I mean? So when I look at somebody else's anxiety, to me, it'll look like a joke. You ever see somebody, you see an accident or you see somebody do something like, let's say, a fall down the stairs. You watch somebody tumble down the stairs. You know damn well you ain't supposed to laugh, but you can't help but laugh. You know what I'm saying? Like you trying hard not to laugh, but you all right, you all right. But in the inside, you as soon as you turn your back, you over here like, you know, and that's how we look at people anxieties. We look at people anxiety for me. Now, again, I always say for me because I can't specify how somebody else going to view something. But for me, I always look at it as get over it, man. Quit playing. Hurry up, man. I'm more of a rip the band-aid off type person opposed to we sitting over here playing with it. Rip that shit off and let's go. And what I learned is that everybody's going to handle their anxieties and their phobias and their fears different. Some people may run, some people may get quiet, some people may uh, get aggressive.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people handle it. And I think one of the most important things about a person with anxiety, a person with a fear or a phobia or get anxious a lot, I think one of the most important things to do there is identify it, label it correctly, because a lot of times we make excuses for what's a good way for me to we'll make excuses for something like oh, I just didn't want to do it because if I would have, or I should have, but I didn't. You know, we give excuses and give it other names when it can really just be that anxiety. Maybe, maybe you fear getting punched in the nose and your nose getting broke and your eyes turning black and your mouth getting swelled up. You know what I'm saying? Maybe that's a fear. Or but you don't say it's a fear. Maybe you use it, or I would have punched him in the face, but I didn't. You know what I mean? Or that was probably a good example or a bad one, depending on who's looking or listening. I think the important thing is to identify and label correctly something that's
A burden.
a burden to us. You know what I'm saying? That's bothering us. That we need to start saying, okay, this is something that's a lingering issue, and I need to address it and identify it as such. So to go with what you would say, put it in the see the problem, put it in the good or the bad. The good parts about this problem as I see it now. The bad parts is this. Let's not focus on the bad parts no more.
Yeah.
Focus on the good parts only. What's your thoughts?
I think that, even though people kind of intertwine those things, I think that they're not necessarily always related. I don't think that anxiety necessarily means fear, or that fear necessarily means anxiety. There can be cases where that is true, but people can be anxious and have like panic attacks or whatever without necessarily being afraid of anything. And sometimes those things can come just out of nowhere. So they might be perfectly fine, not really afraid, and they can't identify what's causing them to be anxious. And sometimes I think that's the issue with anxiety. That's the tricky part. with anxiety is that people can't always identify what's triggering their anxiety. They have to really dig deep and in some cases seek help or uh, learn to meditate and figure out what's really causing their anxiety. I think it's easier to pinpoint fears. Now, fears can cause anxiety, but that would be the root of the anxiety. And if a person can identify that the fear is causing that anxiety, or the phobia and fear being, pretty much the same thing, is causing that anxiety, then they just the as I said before, the solution is always in the problem, but the problem is identifying the real, cause of the problem. So if fear is at the root of the anxiety, then they can go into what it is that's driving that fear, and then they can work on overcoming that fear, which will ultimately help with anxiety. But somebody who has panic attacks or anxiety, and they don't really know why, what causes them to start feeling anxious, then they have more work to do, because they might not be able to say, oh, I was afraid of something. They could be sitting at a basketball game, and out of nowhere, their heart rate elevate. They start sweating. They start getting like the jitters out of nowhere. And so for somebody who has panic attacks, I know a couple of people who've had panic attacks, and I know a couple of people who have had anxiety, and they wasn't necessarily in a situation of something that they was afraid of. They might just be feeling overwhelmed in that moment.
I like that. I like that word.
Right? So sometimes that anxiety comes from feeling overwhelmed in the moment, and learning how to control your breathing, control emotions in those moments where people feel overwhelmed, because that's what being anxious is. Like when you were saying that you wasn't sure if you had anxiety or not, the reason is because you remember times where you felt anxious, and that could have been just triggered by feeling overwhelmed, right? By something, a task that you don't really like doing can cause people to feel overwhelmed and feel anxiety, or being in an environment where they just feel overwhelmed by different emotions or energy. So learning how to control your energy, learning how to control your breathing, practicing meditation, I think is a solution for individuals that may have issues with anxiety. And you know what else is great for anxiety?
Go for it.
Exercise. Exercise is a
Awesome.
great way to help you build up different strengths physically and mentally. It helps you get in tune with your strengths and weaknesses. It teaches you discipline, and it just makes you a more healthy version of yourself, so that you can protect yourself against like elevated heart rate. You learn how to recover through exercise when your heart rate is elevated. You learn how to recover when you feel fatigued or whatever. So exercise is also a good thing. Meditation, exercise. Sometimes people use exercise to let out energy so that they don't get anxious, or that's their place where they're like, I got to go hit the gym. I got to go hit the punching bag. I got to do something. So I would say this, to put a cap on what I'm saying, is that you have to find those best practices that bring you back to the state of mind that you want to be in. And some good practices would be meditation, stretching, yoga, exercise, going for a swim, going for a walk, focusing on your breathing, but also identifying whenever you can what is at the root of that anxiety, and definitely what's at the root of your fear.